What is happening? Or as they say in Fiji, bula, bula, bula. We are currently in near Nadi, Fiji, just hanging for about 10 days. Birthday week for me, and we're just enjoying our time here with a couple of friends. And we rented a house. We're in an Airbnb house that we're sharing with them, and it is gorgeous and beautiful and a lot of fun. So I am Matt Javitt alongside Nikki Javitt. We are a traveling couple that has been on the road for over 2 years now, and we're coming near the end of our journey. And we are documenting everything we're going through and our experiences here on the podcast and at passportjoy.com with the hopes to share information that will make your journey more unforgettable and just a great trip. But today we're going to talk about our time in Brisbane and in Sydney, Australia, which was about a little over almost 3 weeks long, combined those two. And we'll get into the details of that, why we enjoyed it so much and just hanging out with our friends there, and some rugby activity and just, I guess, a few tips and tricks that might help you on your journey if you go there, and some things to think about. And as always, you can find the important links in the show notes. If you go to passportjoy.com, just click on the podcast tab and you can get the show notes for each of these episodes, as is in this one. And if you're just getting caught up to who we are and you want to hear more about our journey or a different location, the best place to see all the places that we've been to is at the Journey So Far tab on the website. You click there, it'll break down month by month and country by country all the places we've been. Or if you want to listen to episode 45, it also does we do a great job of documenting everything we did in our first 2 years on the road. That's a good one to listen to. A few things to think about if you want to look into our journey a little bit further or just help us in any way. One is Nikki's book. It's called Passport Joy, Reflections on Life, Love, and Other Stuff While Traveling the World. It's her first published book. It's on Amazon. You could either just go to the website, click on a link I have there, or just go on, just search it on Amazon. But it's her first book. She gets into a lot of details on her experiences leading up to the travels and then also on the journey. Next is my Kickstarter campaign. Depending upon when you listen to this, I have a Kickstarter campaign on a police photo book. I've taken over 60 photos of police officers around the world, men and women, and I'm doing a Kickstarter campaign to create a photo book. The project was just recently covered for Police Magazine, and it's getting some press that way, so I'm excited about that. The next thing is World Barbershop Adventures, continues to gain traction. We just posted the Brisbane episode, and then we'll be doing the Fiji one here soon, but it's the visual aspect of our journey, time of me in barber chairs around the world, but also a look at the culture, and gives you some snippets there, and it's just some things to view as we travel the world. And then if you want to support through the partners page, this is all the companies that help make our journey easier along the way, and some of the companies that we use. Go to passportjoy.com/partners, full list of all the companies we use there, and it's not only a description of why we love them, but then the links to get some discounts along the way. All right, and then if you want to receive a weekly email update on our journey, just sign up at the website, put your email address in there, click go. And I just sent out a weekly update of travel stuff, but also other important stuff that might help you in your life, and also some things to keep you up to date on our experience. All right, that is it. Let's get into this episode. Okay. So we came to Brisbane. We're going to talk about Brisbane and Sydney and the total of about 20 days over that time in those places. But so we came from Tasmania and flew into Brisbane, and we knew that we were going to hang out with our friends, our close friends, Nick and Kathryn, for our time in Brisbane, which ended up being about 11 days in that area, maybe even 12 days. But the idea was catch up with them, hang out, get to see the Gold Coast region, and we were going to go out to what they call the bush. It's like the deep countryside in Australia where you get exposed to just that kind of the outback mentality. But it was a lot of just weird factors going on our visit. So as we land there, we go to the Redcliffe area, in Newport. It's like the northern side of Brisbane. That's where Nick's parents stayed, and we had a chance to go there and visit there. But at the same time, our buddy's dog, who had just come from the United States, was undergoing some problems. I mean, to perfectly clear, the dog had stones, 50 stones that had to kidney stones that had to be removed. So because of Nick and I are huge animal and dog lovers, we got it. We understood that the plans had to change because we had to take care of this dog and make sure that everything was good there. So at that point, because he had to have surgery and everything. So at that point, everything sort of shifted and made it it would be a different type of visit and it was raining that first weekend we got there. It was raining like crazy. So we just decided just to shift, chill a lot, hang out with them, see the local sites. So we had a chance to go visit some of the coastal areas in the north and spend a lot of time in that Redcliffe area. The weather broke one day where I had a chance to have a long walk along the coastline, and we just really just chilled and had a chance to revisit with them because we hadn't seen them in 2 years and just get caught up on life, watch some Netflix. I ended up getting a tattoo at a local shop just randomly because that's what you do when you're in Australia. You got to get a tattoo. All those dudes have tattoos. And then we just kind of chilled. And then from there, we went to Newstead. Nick and Kathryn live in an apartment in Newstead. And then we just took in that area because obviously they were working during the week. And we just wanted to see what it's like to live in Brisbane because obviously we've met a lot of Aussies as we've traveled. And then with them relocating from the States to live there, we wanted to understand the vibe of what the city life is like, why people love it so much. And we got it really easy. From our time in Melbourne, major city, and then Brisbane, obviously Tasmania is more of just kind of a low-key, vacation-y, earthy type of location. Brisbane is more of a big city that has big city things going on with a lot of corporations there. So we had a chance to see why people love it so much. And with the Brisbane river that comes in, and a chance to walk that gorgeous coast with the Brisbane River. And then we went out to, we took the ferry through the Brisbane River to see the CBD area, saw the Victoria Bridge, the Story Bridge, all the things that were going on in that region. We understood, man, Brisbane's an awesome city. There's a lot of nightlife. There's strong foodie culture. They have a lot of Asian influence on their food as well. And it's a cool city to hang out. And then I guess the work life culture seems to be real heavy on the life aspect. Obviously they're kicking butt and they're working hard, but you see a lot of people that just came from the gym or were going to the gym, a lot of bikers, a lot of walkers. And it seems like the priorities are definitely in order. There's kind of this laid back, chill vibe. And there's a lot of like beautiful people there, big humans. That was the big thing for me is how big the men are. Not only in Brisbane, but also when we went to Sydney, but just massive, tall, 6'5", 6'7", and built. And then it was just cool to be able to walk around the town and see that. But yeah, so during that week there, we had a chance to, they had a great workout facility, a nice pool. Like I said, we walked around the coastline, went downtown, took the ferry in. And then, yeah, the March Madness was going on, so that was neat to be able to have that in a place where you can just watch it with no issue. And then we went to a lot of the local bars around them. And then there was this place called Eat Street in the North Shore. This is, if you're vacationing in that area, if you spend time in Brisbane, definitely a place that I would go because it was a cool vibe because you could watch these musicians on a stage, but it was an open air concept where there was like a lot of foodie options, all kinds of different ethnicities.
Yeah, so Eat Street was essentially like a bunch of food trucks and they had tons of options of food. They had like Thai food and Vietnamese food and Italian food. They had wood-fired pizzas and places where you could get like ice cream and they had like little makeshift bars where you could get some cocktails and stuff you wanted, but it was just a cool overall vibe. I mean, hundreds of people were there. This is not like a small thing, but you could sit outdoors on these picnic tables or just walk around while you ate your food. And the food portions were not, in my opinion, they weren't super large, but they were large enough where I just ordered Thai food and I ate just that. But they had smaller portions too, where you could try just a lot of things. And it was super cool. They had great places too, where you could go outside and take pictures in front of some really neat signs just to get that like cool, I guess, Instagram pic or whatever. But yeah, so we did that. And then we also went to a rugby match. I guess it was an AFL match at the Gabba Stadium. So that was just a unique experience because we've seen sports all around the world and I have never seen this sort of rugby match. First of all, the field on which these people play on is ginormous. Like it makes an American football field look small, and they're just so fast and so quick and constantly running around. And I don't remember the exact mileage that each of the players runs per game, but it's like 6 miles each player will run just in this particular sport per game. But those dudes are such badasses. They are, I mean, no padding like we all know in rugby, but just how agile they have to be and how quick and get just like hit so hard with no pads on. I was just really, really surprised. I've never seen anything really like that before.
And the rugby, we learned that there's really 3 different rugbies. There's the National Rugby League, the Australian Football League, the AFL, and that's what Nikki's describing. And then there's the Union Rugby. And they're all different because the one that we watched here, the AFL match, it was the Brisbane Lions versus the West Coast Eagles, and it was a high scoring game. It was 102-58. And it was mostly more extremely athletic guys and not really the big bulky brute guys that do the scrums and the heavy pushing. These guys were mostly just like a lot of running and kicking. Like Nikki said, they run an average of like 6 miles per match, and endurance has to be at a high level. So, and that was really cool about this visit is my friend Nick is deep into rugby. He understands it enough that he was teaching us some of the rules, and then I got a chance to understand the different types of games. So it was cool to be around somebody that had that knowledge and passion too, because it is definitely a way of life when you're looking at here now we're in Fiji that they have the same passion for it, and obviously New Zealand. It's fun to be able to get that true understanding, but those guys that are a different level at that match because just highly athletic and just big dudes. And then I guess some of the things to think about for Brisbane is we did go out late a couple of nights, and you 100% need an ID if you're going out past 10 o'clock. If you're going anywhere after 10 to a bar or nightclub, they do not care. I don't look anywhere close to 20, and you have to have an ID. So I brought my passport. Did you bring your driver's license? Nikki brought her driver's license, and then obviously our friends had their local IDs. But you have to go out. And some of the nightclubs in downtown Brisbane, I could not get in because I had tennis shoes on a particular night that Nick and I went out. I had tennis shoes, so we had to find a different type of bar to go to because the nicer nightclubs, it's kind of Vegas style where they'll look at your shoes. So you got to make sure that you dress the part and you look the part.
Another interesting thing I found in Australia in general is that when you're going to a pub, like we would just call it a pub or a local bar or whatever, not a nightclub, they call those hotels. So they're like, hey, let's go to a hotel, whatever. And I honestly, when they were saying that to us, thought we were going to like a hotel lobby bar, had no clue. And they said, no, this is the equivalent to our pub. So it's just a little bit of different terminology, I guess, so to speak. But their bars in general are super cool. If you like gambling, they have these machines inside where you can gamble. They're by a company called Tab. And so you could just walk in, say there's college basketball going on or horse racing or you name the sport. And it's pretty much every sport you can possibly think of. And it's just a little touchscreen kiosk and you feed your money into it, your cash into it and place your bets. And it's a really cool vibe because a lot of people in their late 20s and to up to mid 40s were placing these bets, and then everyone can sit around and you have all these different sports games going on at one time. And people have, just a small amount of money on the game. And it just makes it super interesting because everyone's, yelling at a different TV screen or whatnot. But it's the first time I've ever really seen that.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge gambling culture in Australia, even so much that when I spoke to people, they were kind of nervous about how big of the gambling culture is. But as Nikki was describing, these tab places, they're in a lot of locations around the city. So I was even thinking, because we were there for March Madness, which is really cool because then we could bet on the games a little bit. But I was thinking like, man, a guys trip. If you're part of like a guys group that always goes to Vegas every year, you could do like a different option and say, let's go to Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. Then you can still have that same vibe of like a casino-esque vibe where you put money on the games and you're sitting with your buddies and you're doing your thing. But then you could also see a different part of the world too. And they have casinos too. There's nice casinos in Australia. So that's just a thought. But yeah, those tabs are really cool and easy to play. And really basically self-serve kiosk. So it was pretty cool. Another thing to note is Uber's everywhere. Really easy to grab an Uber and for your transportation. They do have public transportation. We took the ferry. We took a bus. I took a bus, and we also took a train. So there's different options. It's weird because the bus is actually more expensive than probably it should be, based on our experience. But and the ferry is pretty expensive too. So the Uber is really probably the best way to get around and the fastest way because their public transport is not cheap. And then, speaking of gambling, there's the Treasury Casino that's in downtown Brisbane. It's really nice. It's like this old, I guess it's the Treasury building for the city. And it's kind of like an old school vibe to it, but open air it was nice to get some games in the basement. And everything, it's a typical everything that you'd want to play casino if you're used to those in America. But yeah, it's all inside. I say open air as I just meant that it's high ceilings and very open. That was different. And then, I don't know, I guess the takeaways from that time in Brisbane were just an amazing time hanging out with our friends, sharing a ton of laughs, getting back up to speed with them. Their family was amazing. When you talk about all the hospitality they gave us, the cookouts, we had a great wine. The cookouts though, we had lamb, we had steaks one night, and they obviously did a bunch of stuff for Nikki for her diet. But it was really cool to not only be around them, but also be around a dog that much, because as you guys know, we love dogs and animals. So having a chance to bring on the dog Toby for that period of time as he was going through his surgery was a lot of fun. But it's very much like California. That's what Nikki and I kept saying. Like we felt like we could have been in like San Diego or something. Just the vibe there, or LA, the chillness of it, and then the fact that everything is readily available and you've got so many options around it. So, and cheese boards, we learned a great deal about cheese boards. Kathryn is an incredible cheese board creator, and it's something that hopefully we'll do a lot when we go home. But yeah, I don't know how much we can say about that trip because it was so different than kind of like a sightseeing trip. It was very much more chill and laid back. And then we transitioned to Sydney. So we left there on a Monday and transitioned to Sydney for 7 days. And we settled into Bondi Beach area where we had a shared Airbnb, which ended up having anywhere between 2 and 3 different couples in this house. There was a couple from Chile, Canada, and then there was rotating couples in another room as they were visiting. But it was nice. It was cool to be around other people like that, to learn about their culture as well. But we were in a great location, 5 minutes from the beach. And Bondi Beach it's got a rep around the world for being amazing, and deservedly so, because it is just gorgeous. It's clean, safe, wide open, tons of surfers, definitely like a surfy vibe to it. And then the shops and the restaurants, definitely a lot of healthy food options, and just a cool all around vibe to the town. And then there's trekking, tons of trekking options that you can take advantage of.
Yeah, so there's this famous trek where you can walk from Bondi to Coogee or Coogee. I don't really honestly know how to say it. I think it's Coogee. So you walk, and it took us about, I'd say one way, an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how fast you walk. But it's gorgeous. It's just this pathway that's been created, whether it's out of like wood planks or I don't know, there's parts of it where it was metal, but it was a very nice pathway. Now, we've walked tons of pathways all around the world, and this is like super safe. You don't feel like you're going to fall over the ledge. There's a railing the entire time. It's sturdy. The pathway itself was never broken in any part. They have water fountains all along the way. And so when you're walking, you have the coastline on one side, and then you have just like beautiful landscape on the other side. And then intermixed is probably about 5 or 6 different beaches from Bondi to Coogee. And you can stop along and swim if you'd like, or, grab a bite to eat. I mean, we got like a nice coffee one time, and it's just a really nice walk. We actually did the walk twice because we enjoyed it so much the first time. So it's a really good, moderate workout. So your round trip would be maximum 3 hours. And then when we'd get to Coogee, we'd find some sort of lunch that we wanted to eat, like fresh vegetables or something. But it was just really enjoyable. It's comparative to the St. Blaise Trail along the Garden Route in South Africa. And it just reminded me of that. But when you're on that trail itself, there's no ledges. You're walking on a dirt path. So it's nothing like this. There's tons of people walking on it. Super safe. And again, like I said, the added bonus is they have water all along the way, like out of these drinking fountains. So you don't have to worry about that. Just throw your sunscreen on and you're good to go. But we did that twice and really, really liked it. I guess another couple of things that we did was we took from where we were the ferry, short ferry ride, but it was suggested to us that we take the ferry instead of just like Ubering to the Opera House, because you have such great views of the Opera House from the ferry boat when you're on the water. And so you really can get those nice photographs just from a different angle as the boat goes around the backside of the Opera House, or I think it's actually the front side. And then it drops you right off on the pathway that leads up to the Opera House. And once you get there, it was kind of weird. I guess I thought we could go inside, but everything was pretty much shut down. But I'm not sure if that's a normal thing, or the day we were there, we could clearly see through the windows they were filming some sort of movie or something like that. So we really couldn't get inside, but it makes for really great photos. And then just, I don't know, a couple blocks away is pretty much their central area where you can go out and, there's amazing shopping. I mean, Christian Dior, Louis Vuitton, whatever, you name it, is there. And then they have other boutique stores and tons of restaurants in that area, which we ate at this Thai place, which was so good. We actually went there and watched a movie and just kind of treated it as this is our trip to the city and we're not on the beach anymore, because the vibe we were getting from Bondi Beach was super chill, laid back, going to the beach, going on our treks. But we didn't really have that full city life of Sydney. So when we took the ferry to the Opera House, we were able to get that, go to a movie theater, get some dinner in town, and then take the ferry back. So I don't know. I suggest it because it was really, really nice to do, but you just get some good photos.
And then the other thing, we ended up going to an NRL match, the rugby. That's the other form of the rugby that we were talking about earlier. And it was totally different because it was much lower scoring game. It was kind of that rougher vibe, bigger dudes pushing on each other, and different rule set. So it gave us a chance to understand that level of rules. And then we had some passionate fans around us. So to be around that level of passion in the city, because there was basically a rivalry match in the city of the game that we went to. But that was really neat, and it was a lot of fun. And the one thing I guess to remember there is, if you're going to those matches as a traveler, we didn't realize until it was over, but our ticket that we purchased was actually, you had free transportation based on just having a ticket. So you can get anywhere you're in the city, you can get to the game and home for free, which is really cool. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and as far as transportation goes, we got this card called the Opal card, and the card itself is free. You didn't have to pay for the card, but we got it at the airport, and then you load it up. The minimum per card is $30 initially from the airport, and then that allows you to take ferries and buses and trains and whatever public transportation that they have available. But the thing to note about it, like Matt was saying, we had no clue that because we held this ticket for the rugby match, that our transportation, because it was an hour and a half away from where we were staying in Bondi Beach. So we figured, oh gosh, it's going to cost a lot of money. It cost us $19 from the airport to Bondi Beach. So we just figured it probably cost similar. And so we loaded up our card again after we used, almost our $30 getting around elsewhere. And I think the minimum is 30, I'm pretty sure. So we put another additional 30 on each card, and then realized, wow, we just had free transport to and from that rugby match. And we really only need to get back to the airport, which we knew was $19 a piece. So a lot of times when we've traveled around the world, these cards, you just turn them in at the very end, somewhere at an airport kiosk, and they'll just say, the face value of the card, because you had to buy it for $5, is what you kind of don't get reimbursed for. But whatever's left on your card, they'll give you back. And sometimes we've dealt with maybe like a small processing fee. Like for someone to do that for you, they'll take like $2 or something. But with this Opal card, just note, if you're really loading it up heavy on the money because you're going to do a lot of travel, in the very end, if you go on their website and see the, I guess, reimbursement policy, you can only be reimbursed if you have a Australia address. So you can mail your card in physically through the mail, and then they will mail you your refund back from the card. And so since we don't live there, it's kind of like, I mean, it was a lot of lost money for us. It was almost like, it was like $50. So, you know, we just ended up giving our cards away to a friend of ours who lived in Australia because we knew they could use it. But it's just kind of a bummer when you spend money that you don't really need to or don't have to. But the card itself was awesome because you could get anywhere and not have to worry about having change for the bus or how much stuff costs. You just tap it when you go on and then tap it when you go off, and it just takes off that running tab that you have.
And the other thing, I guess, around public transportation that stood out to me was I love the way that the Aussies would say thank you when they got off the bus. We saw this so often where people would just make a bus stop and they would yell from the back to the driver, thank you. And that's not something we've seen elsewhere. And I think it just shows the kindness of the Aussie people and the thoughtfulness. But yeah, and I guess the other point to touch on is dining in Australia, because they have a relatively high minimum wage. I guess it's all based on cost of living and everything, but a decent minimum wage, and there's no tips. Their service tends to not be at a level that you might see in the States that you might be used to, because it's a lot of it is kind of self-serving too, where you can go get your own water. Maybe you'll go to the front and you'll get your plates and bring them to the table. In the restaurants that have a typical type of service, they're not around often. And we joked with our Australian friends about how long a dinner could take and even a lunch, because they just don't come around as often because there's no tipping. So there's just less motivation to do it. And even the people that we stayed with in Sydney that were in the hospitality industry that were from like Canada, they said the same thing. They're like, it's almost frustrating to try to give good service knowing that you're not going to get tips for it. So it changes the way that they go about their job as well, and their coworkers. So just something to think about. Don't get frustrated with it. Just know that's how it is. It's just more of a laid back atmosphere when you're going out. It's a lot of you get your own products or get your own stuff that you need. It's pretty chill in all of Australia, but still great experience. So overall, I guess, so we wrapped up a month in Australia between Melbourne, Tasmania, Brisbane, and then Sydney, and it went way too fast. It was, we were shocked when it was over how fast it went, but it was a great trip. We're happy that we went. Australia is one of those places that, quite honestly, it wasn't high on our list because we know that it's so much like America, and we assumed much. But once we went there, we loved it. We loved the people and the difference in the cities, kind of the art culture vibe as well, the laid backness, and then the food is because the food's like a lot like what we're used to it back home, but you get the Asian influence. It was nice to have that, and then obviously spending time with people that we know in Australia was really cool, and having that shared memory experience. But overall, I mean, it went way too fast, and it's one of those places that I know that it's real high on my brother's list that hopefully I'll get to go back sooner than later and experience other parts of it, because it's one of those places that you could, I mean, spend 2 years there just traveling around. I know a lot of people do that. They do we just met Australians that are doing that here in Fiji, that they're going to go see their own country in an RV, and I would say yes to anything like that. That's it. Thanks. And hopefully if there's any tips in there that we can help out with, let us know. And if we missed anything, let us know that as well. But enjoy Australia. And that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. This is the easiest way to get each episode downloaded to your device, but also it helps Nikki and I get in front of new travel listeners that might not be aware of our story. And as always, you can find all the important links from this episode in today's show notes. You go to the podcast tab at passportjoy.com. It lists all the episodes there, and it has all the show notes for each episode and all the important links that might help you in your journey if you decide to go to Sydney, Brisbane, or any of the places that we cover on this podcast. And you can follow along on the travel updates in a weekly newsletter that comes out on Thursdays by signing up at passportjoy.com. This is where I share tips, travel tips, ideas, things that we're going through, and just thoughts in general through that weekly newsletter. So feel free to just put your email address in there and sign up, and you'll get that. And as far as the things I mentioned earlier, Nikki's book, Passport Joy, Reflections on Life, Love, and Other Stuff While Traveling the Road, grab that at Amazon. If, depending on the timing, support the Kickstarter campaign, you can probably just type in police photo book and my campaign will come up. Got a couple weeks left in that, and it's getting a lot of good press. And that is it. You go to the partners page to support the different businesses that we work with while we travel the world. Well, we're getting close to going home soon, less than a month now. So please continue to connect with us on social media and share any thoughts and feelings. And we always appreciate all the kind words that come in and to make our journey super special. All right, we'll be back with you next week for a new episode. Until then, safe travels wherever you might be heading next.